Let's start with the Brandon Aiyuk stuff, Grant, because that was the news of the day yesterday. The Niners are clearing out their locker, and Brandon Aiyuk gets asked, do you want to be with the 49ers next year? And he says, if it's the right move. And then they say, well, what does the right move look like? And he says, to be a champion. I have said this many times with you, Grant. There are some questions that the answer is yes. And if you say anything other than yes, that means no. When Brandon Aiyuk is asked, do you want to be with the 49ers next season? If he doesn't say yes, that means he's done with them. Do you agree?
I don't think he's done with them. It's business. It's a negotiation. Would he come back to the 49ers at the right price? I would imagine he would. Just what's the price going to be, and does it work for the 49ers? That's all this is. I don't think he's done with them or is something personal. Now, I do think he's upset, as he should be. 6 targets, three catches. Like, he was way too productive all year, and in that game to be sort of not phased out, but relegated to a second or third factor. So I get where he's coming from. It's an emotional time. He was crying about the loss, so clearly the team means something to him. I've seen Deebo Samuel and George Kittle go through emotional times too when they're trying to get their contracts. So I don't hold it against him. Really, Deebo did the same thing. Requested a trade, came back, everyone's best friend now. So Brandon's 25. I understand what he's going through. And we can talk about whether or not you think he's worth the $25 million a year that he's probably going to be able to ask for. That's a good discussion. But I was in the room with him yesterday, and he didn't seem like a diva trying to play games. He seemed like a guy who was sincerely doing the best he could while, grieving. More than anyone else I could see grieving. He was so emotional.
They were, grief is the perfect word. That's what I feel like I'm experiencing. It clearly looked like the 49ers players, as you would expect, were grieving because the dream of the season is dead. This season is dead. It is grief. It is a loss that they have to process. But I combine that. Oh, go ahead. Did you have something?
Well, and they feel like they still feel like they should have won. They still feel like they were better than the Chiefs. And I think they're having a tough time figuring out why they lost that game. They still believe they're better than the Chiefs. And Brock played well. And the defense played well. So why did they lose? Is it Kyle's fault? And if it is, I think that really shakes your confidence as a team. Like, our head coach blew it again. Everything they said about him is true. Maybe they haven't even figured out what the story is, but it's a tough one.
It is absolutely a tough one. And trust me, I'll get to Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. Don't you worry about that. But I just want to finish this Aiyuk point.
Yeah, of course.
Because John Lynch was asked about it when Lynch and Shanahan spoke yesterday, and John Lynch was asked, is Aiyuk's contract a priority? And Lynch, instead of saying yes, launched into this long answer about, well, you got to prioritize everything, and we've got a quarterback that's going to have to get paid. And that tells me, I think at the very least, Grant, I think it's fair to say they're open to moving Aiyuk for the right deal. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree. And again, this is negotiation. Aiyuk says, I might, be open to going to Vegas. And the Niners are like, well, we might be open to trading you because, that's how it goes. But I'm just going to say it. I wouldn't trade Brandon Aiyuk. And maybe I do this every time, but I really feel like he's proven himself. He learned the playbook. He's, not a diva. He wants his targets, but he doesn't complain to the media. He blocks. He's really everything you want. And I think he's still getting better. That's the kind of guy. And his game isn't built on physicality like Deebo's. You could see that one was an investment that may not last long. Like a lot of his value is playing running back and breaking tackle. Aiyuk's just a great route runner who can run every freaking route on the route tree at an elite level. Plus he's tough. Plus he blocks. Plus he's fast enough to be a deep threat. He averaged what did he average? 17, 18, 19 yards a catch this year. To me, that's a safe investment.
And he's healthy.
The problem is you already gave money to Deebo. And that's a lot of freaking money to 2 wide receivers on a team that ranked 32nd in pass attempts this year, I believe.
That's the question. It's not just, I think fans are looking at it in terms of, should we bring Brandon Aiyuk back? Yes or no? But it's not a binary question like that because every dollar you spend on Aiyuk is a dollar you can't spend on other places of the team.
And you
For
already don't throw him the ball enough. I mean,
Right.
frankly, if he were on the Chiefs, you know what I'm saying? Like, if he were on the Chiefs, he'd be getting 150 targets a year.
Yeah. And
Right?
that's honestly, if I were him, that's
Yeah.
where I would maybe look to go. Although they don't pay wide receivers. As we saw, they traded Tyreek Hill and won back-to-back Super Bowls.
True.
But if you're telling me the 49ers could get like a first and a fourth for Aiyuk,
You probably could.
I would trade him because you can use that first round pick wherever it might be. Maybe you have to package it with your own to move up and get an offensive lineman. This draft is full of wide receivers. You can draft another wide receiver. Like, I think that I would have to consider that if I'm the 49ers. I don't think it's just like, oh, we have to have Brandon Aiyuk back. No. And I agree. If you could find a way to trade Deebo Samuel over Brandon Aiyuk, I would do that. But it's easier to trade Aiyuk with the contract situation. Deebo's contract, it would have to be a post-June 1st thing. Otherwise, you're going to take a massive, massive cap hit. So the whole thing is hairy, but I think people aren't looking at the bigger picture when they think about it.
I don't like it because to me, this is DeForest Buckner all over again. Aiyuk's done everything right.
Mhm.
You know, like you traded up for him in round one, at the end of round one, you got a bargain there. He's better than that draft spot. And like he improved every single year. He doesn't talk. He does all the little things. Like, what does it say to your team and your culture if you trade that guy? But you kept Deebo, who's like always like a little overweight and isn't really run that hard if he doesn't get the ball and has no interest in blocking. Like, that's the guy you keep? The guy because he's best friends with Kyle? What are we doing? What is the culture here? Aiyuk's the culture. Aiyuk's the tough guy. I mean, to me, he's the guy who shows up every day of training camp and sets the tone along with Christian McCaffrey to practice hard. That's not Deebo. That's not Kittle. Sorry, Kittle. I mean, it used to be Kittle, but he's 30 now. This is the guy who's 25 and ascending. This is he could be the MVP of your offense next year. I mean, what is McCaffrey's shelf life? They give him the ball a lot. He's a running back. He's going to be 28 years old. Also, it takes a long time to learn Kyle Shanahan's offense. Is a rookie wide receiver really going to be able to do what Aiyuk could do next year? Maybe in a couple years he'd be better, but this is a team that has aspirations right now. Like Brock Purdy's got his last year on his rookie deal coming up. This is still the Niners window. That's why the Niners are favored to win the Super Bowl next year because of the Brock Purdy fact. So these are all things you got to factor in, and why I really would be in favor of keeping Brandon Aiyuk, even though in a couple years you might be looking at that contract being like, damn. $30 million cap hit for 28 years. Like, yeah, man, I still would do it.
Deebo, I think the allowances get made for Deebo because the allowances always get made for great players. I don't think he gets away with what he does. Is he can take over football games.
He can.
He took over that Eagles game. Absolutely took over that Eagles game.
Yeah.
Deebo's best is better than Aiyuk's best. The problem is that Deebo's floor is lower than Aiyuk's floor.
I don't even know if I agree with that anymore.
Oh, I totally agree with it.
But here's the thing with Aiyuk. I know. Here's the thing with Aiyuk, though. He's catching the ball further down the field. So to him, I mean, he would really benefit from a team that had a better offensive line.
Yes.
I mean, on this team where the ball kind of has to come out quickly, especially against certain opponents like Philly, then yeah, a guy like Deebo is more valuable in that matchup. But that's sort of because he masks certain weaknesses the 49ers choose to have. And isn't it really funny that now everyone's had the epiphany, like, you know what? This team needs to invest in the offensive line. Like, yeah, man. Isn't that what we said during the draft last year when the Niners took no offensive linemen and people were like, it doesn't matter? It does.
Clearly,
it does.
The offensive line, kind of important. I'm just saying. So we will definitely keep an eye on the Brandon Aiyuk situation 100%. Let's get to some of the super chats because we've got a lot of them.
Before we go on, what do you think ends up with that Brandon Aiyuk situation? I guess that's the final question. We said what we think should happen, but like, what do you think's going to happen? Is he going to be the next DeForest Buckner? He might be.
I think the Niners would prefer to keep him.
Sure.
But I think that if a team really wanted him, you could get him. I think they'd have to be I think there's a 2 draft pick deal where one of them is a first round pick, and I think the Niners do it.
Can I give you a conspiracy theory real quick? And I bet you Brandon Aiyuk is thinking about this right
now.
Brandon, conspiracy theory. How come you only got 6 targets in the Super Bowl? Why? Why did Deebo get all those targets? Why?
Because they already paid Deebo and
yes!
they don't have to pay. Oh.
Yes. Business decisions in the Super Bowl. Hey, maybe that's not true, but if I were Brandon, I'd be wondering. It's like, how did I play that well all year to get relatively snubbed in the Super Bowl? Because from his perspective, he feels snubbed. I don't know.
Well, the Brandon Aiyuk only had 3 catches in every single playoff game this year. So it wasn't just the Super Bowl.
That's not his fault. I'd be mad too. He's really good.
Yeah, I get
How
why
many
he's
wide
mad.
receivers are legitimately better than Brandon Aiyuk? How many?
I mean, off the top of my head, geez, I don't know. I haven't really figured this
4 or
out.
5? Maybe 4 or
Tyreek
5?
Hill, Jamar Chase is definitely better than him. Devontae Adams is definitely better than him.
I take Aiyuk at this point. Devontae's getting a little old.
CeeDee Lamb, I would put is better than him.
Debatable.
Mike Evans is better than him.
No, not for me. Too old.
I mean, Mike
But
Evans,
I'm a Brandon Aiyuk fan. What can I say? I'm getting my Brandon Aiyuk signed jersey coming.
I'm not trying to crap on Brandon Aiyuk here. You
are.
You asked me to name people, so I'm
That's
naming
fair.
people.
That's fair. We're arguing. That's cool.
Yeah, the Aiyuk thing is definitely going to be something to monitor. And I think that kind of like Debo, I think the Niners really didn't want to trade Debo, but they would have if they got blown away. I think they want to trade Aiyuk. I think they're more open to trading Aiyuk, and I think the deal wouldn't have to be as good to get them to do it.
Who was a more complete wide receiver in the NFL than Brandon Aiyuk? He does everything well. He runs every route. He is a threat after the catch. He blocks. He goes over the middle. He's fat. I mean, like, I don't know, man. I don't feel comfortable trading a player like this, especially on a team that I feel hasn't taken full advantage of his skill sets. Debo has been, they take full advantage of Debo. Kyle's dreaming of new ways to use him. Could you just spend one season giving Brandon Aiyuk the targets he's clearly earned before you trade him? To me, it kind of reminds me of like to go to another sport. You know, the Thunder trading James Harden to the Rockets 10 years ago when he was their 6th man. And the Rockets are like, okay, well, we're just going to give him 30 shots a night. Thank you very much. You guys weren't really using this guy. We're going to use him. Kind of like that.
And I think it also depends on like what you get back for him, right? Like the Vikings traded Stephon Diggs. They got Justin Jefferson. Like
That's
if
true.
you can do that, of course, everyone would say trade Brandon Aiyuk, right? Like, so, we don't know the second part.
If they're incredibly convicted about a wide receiver in the draft, then sure. But I mean, like, that doesn't always work out. They tried this with DeForest Buckner. They tried it. They traded him. They got the 1st round pick. They took another player at that position, and it just didn't work out because it's hard to replace. DeForest Buckner did everything right. He was good at everything. He improved every year. He was a leader on the team. Man, is that not Brandon Aiyuk? I think he could be a captain if you made him one. I think he has that mentality.
Yeah, I think so too.